Merab Dvalishvili versus Cody Stamann takes place this weekend on the main card of UFC Fight Night Vegas 25, Reyes versus Prochazka, and I can't wait for this bantamweight bout. I know I say that at the start of all of these prediction videos, but that's why I make the prediction videos. I can't wait for this bantamweight bout. You've got two ranked contenders in the bantamweight division, number 12 versus number 13, Merab versus Stamann. Really looking forward to this one. In my opinion, this should be the feature fight of the card, rather than Ion Cutelaba versus Dustin Jacoby, two guys who are arguably both coming off losses right now, because Jacoby arguably should have lost to Maxim Grishin. Either way, this one should be the feature fight in my opinion, but it's a little bit earlier on the card. Merab versus Stamann, great contenders matchup in the bantamweight division. Merab's been on a real tear recently in his UFC career, 5 in a row now, and he has been looking pretty dominant in those bouts as well, just completely ragdolling his opponents start to finish. He had a little bit of a tricky situation at the start of his career, lost to Ricky Simone in his second fight in the UFC, and lost his debut to Frankie Saenz as well. And I know there was a lot of confusion around him losing to Frankie Saenz and Ricky Simone. I think both can be explained, but Merab is not the same fighter that fought those guys the first time. He's definitely dramatically improved his game over the past couple of years. He's doing more damage now with the takedowns, which is something that I feel like costed him the Frankie Saenz bout. I've watched it again. It was around the time when the scoring system was changing. They were not looking at takedowns anymore. They were more focusing on total strikes and significant strikes, and Merab just really was ragdolling Frankie Saenz around, but just wasn't doing the damage in the meantime, and Frankie Saenz ended up landing more significant strikes in round 1 and round 3, and somehow sneaking himself the fight, even though it looked like Merab won the fight. And I actually do believe still, with those significant strike numbers, that Merab tossing him around all over the place like an absolute dog toy does deserve to get him that win over Frankie Saenz. But then he had another loss early in his career to Ricky Simone. More weirdness in Merab's career. Lost to Ricky Simone, got guillotined at the end, but the ref called it off after the bell, which is something you're not supposed to do, because OSP versus Dominic Reyes went to a decision, of course, as well. You're not supposed to call off a fight after the bell, but either way, he got kind of put out at the end of that fight with Ricky Simone, but he came back too. Weird situation. They gave it to Ricky Simone by TKO or some ridiculous call like that. But since then, Merab's been on a rampage, and he's starting to learn to damage in the meantime, rather than just toss his opponents around. He's got to do the damage. He's got to get the significant strikes, and that's something that he's done in his past few fights. But he's taken on Cody Stamann, who is by far the toughest test of his career so far. But is it? Because John Dodson is arguably around the tier level of Cody Stamann in that bantamweight division. So maybe this is just another repeat situation for Merab Dvalishvili. He's got to get one more win over a legit contender. Then we can start looking to chuck him up to the top 5. Georgia's on the map right now. They're doing really well. They've even got Giga Chikadze in the co-main event. I'm assuming they maybe wanted to space the Georgians out on the card and not just have everyone get Georgia'd out for a second, because that's the only reason I can't see this being the feature fight over Cutelaba versus Jacoby. But either way, Merab Dvalishvili, absolute savage. Cody Stamann, on the other hand, really underrated contender in the bantamweight division. He's only lost to really good opponents: Jimmy Rivera, Aljamain Sterling. That's it. Aljamain's, I guess, the champion right now of the bantamweight division, but not really. He had a draw to Song Yadong at one point in his career, but Cody Stamann is a really good grappler, which is why this fight is very intriguing to me, because you've got two really good grapplers. Cody Stamann, I would argue, is probably going to have a little bit of a technical striking advantage, but then again, the imposure of Merab Dvalishvili, once he tosses you round a couple of times, you start hesitating with your shots. You don't want to throw punches the same way anymore. I just burped through that sentence. You don't want to throw kicks anymore, because he's just going to grab it and dunk you on the canvas. I feel like Merab changes the way people strike in front of him, and I feel like this is definitely going to be a sticky grappling match against the cage, a bunch of takedowns without any real damage being done, or great significant strikes from full mount, or any submission attempts really, or anything like that. I feel like this is going to be a cage fest where Merab just takes the legs out from underneath Cody Stamann and just starts kneeing the fire, punching to the body in the clinch, landing some good shots to the head as Cody Stamann tries to scramble out from underneath a takedown. I feel like it's going to be a Merab Dvalishvili clinic in the grappling. First round is going to be very close, which is why I'm going to call maybe a 30-27 or a 29-28 to Merab Dvalishvili. I do believe that Cody Stamann has it in him to maybe land more significant strikes in that first round, but as the rounds go on, something we've seen in Cody Stamann's career is that if you wrestle back with him, he doesn't keep a great wrestling pace for too long. If he can out-grapple you, and he's the one grappling with you, he can do very well. But as these rounds go on, if he can't get the takedowns as easy and you're getting takedowns on him and he's being forced to engage in the grappling when he doesn't want to, he does seem to slow down. He's the older guy right now. He's the much smaller man as well. I know they're both the same height, but Merab is a different sized guy in the bantamweight division, and you're going to realize that at weigh-ins he is draining himself to the absolute brink to make bantamweight, in my opinion. When I watched him versus John Dodson, Dodson looked like a fucking atom weight next to Merab Dvalishvili. I mean, he's an absolute savage. Massive guy for the division. Got some power. He's got a massive reach advantage as well, which I think is going to give him that little bit of safety from Cody Stamann on the feet. Not to mention, Cody Stamann is not one of these guys that's going to be TKOing you or catching you with a big punch on the feet. To be honest with you guys, I don't think he has one TKO in his entire career. No, he doesn't. But both of these guys are really good. Merab pushes such a heavier pace. I feel like Cody Stamann's going to drown under that pace and lose himself a unanimous decision. 30-27. Maybe I'll say 29-28, and I'll have Cody Stamann steal the first round on significant strikes. Maybe some knees in the clinch, maybe some body shots in the clinch. Cody Stamann wins on significant strikes in the first round, has some good grappling exchanges. Then in the last two rounds, just like the Aljamain Sterling fight, I don't see Stamann keeping up that pace, because against Aljo shot back on Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann started to slow down a little bit. Against Jimmy Rivera, he couldn't get Jimmy Rivera down. In fact, Jimmy Rivera even ended up grappling with him for a moment in that fight. 2 out of 3 takedowns for Jimmy Rivera, and eventually Jimmy Rivera starts really pulling away as the rounds go on in those later rounds. I don't think Stamann can keep a great grappling pace, and that's why I'm picking Merab Dvalishvili here. I think he's got a great pace. He's learned how to mix in damage in between it. If I had to pick anyone in a bantamweight division to beat Merab Dvalishvili, it'd be very difficult to do, because I think he could go on and become a real legit threat in this division, because we don't really have that dominant grappler that's going to go for those takedowns in the division. I feel like if Merab wins this one, the only people I can maybe see beating him at bantamweight are Piotr Yan, Cody Garbrandt, and Pedro Munoz. I need takedown defense. I need brutal power on the feet. That's something that Cody Stamann does not have, in my opinion, that I think people can make Merab pay for. He does walk into shots now and again. He's draining a lot of weight. He's not too good at striking, so he doesn't really know how to roll with shots. He doesn't have the best head movement in the world either. But what he does do is grapple hard, and he does it very well. But I feel like I need a guy with massive power on the feet that can change things in an instant in those in-between exchanges between the grappling moments. And I don't think Cody Stamann's got the power in him to do that. I know he's called the Spartan, but I see this guy crying every time. He's called the Spartan, but I see him crying every interview I see of him, to be honest with you guys. But either way, he's on the hate Aljamain Sterling train, which I do agree with, to be honest with you guys. So I'm very glad that he's calling out Aljamain Sterling about faking the knee and all the actor stuff and all that. But he did lose to Aljamain, so maybe he's a little bit salty. But either way, Cody Stamann, very good contender. Not good enough to beat Merab Dvalishvili, in my opinion. And I think the winner of this one is going to be in a real tough situation, because if Merab wins, he's going to be on a 6-fight win streak. Who's going to want to fight him? You know? He's number 12. If he wins this one against Cody Stamann, I assume they're going to move him above Rivera and Assunção to number 10. Dominic Cruz, I don't think is going to take a fight with Merab Dvalishvili. I think they're going to do Jose Aldo versus Pedro Munoz. Edgar's not going to take a fight against Merab Dvalishvili. I think they're going to do Edgar versus Dominic Cruz. Marlon Moraes, I believe, is probably going to get a fight signed with Sean O'Malley real soon. I think that's the name that they're hiding from us. So I don't know who's going to take him on. Aldo, I think, is going to fight Munoz. Cody Garbrandt's fighting Rob Font. Corey Sandhagen's fighting TJ Dillashaw, which has now been suspended, or not suspended. It's now been rescheduled to a later date, and Jan's got his rematch with Aljamain Sterling. I think the winner of this one might have to take on another up-and-comer, like a Ricky Simone. Ooh, that'd be pretty good. And if Merab wants to slow things down a little bit, take on the Ricky Simone fight, get that redemption against Ricky Simone, against another great grappler, maybe it'd be pretty good. But there is some moments with Merab when he does go for so many takedowns, where he does dip a little bit, but then he gets sort of like a second wind in the third round. So maybe Cody Stamann by second round TKO is like a great Hail Mary bet for the value. But either way, Just no evidence for it whatsoever. And even in the grappling situations, if I'm going to pick someone to finish, Merab actually goes for submission attempts. I don't think Cody Stamann has had a single submission attempt in his entire career. Like, he just grapples and holds and lands total strikes. I don't think you can play that game with Merab Dvalishvili. I can see him just pushing Cody Stamann up against the cage, taking him down. Stamann gets back up. Merab knees the thigh a couple of times, couple little jabs to the ribs, couple punches to the thigh, maybe a couple of foot stomps, who knows. That might be something that he'd want to implement into his game. I'm sure that'd be a great technique to use from Merab Dvalishvili. I just don't see Cody Stamann getting this one. And I feel bad because he's a nice guy, you know. But Merab's got this one in the bag. The only one I can see beating Merab is Chuck Liddell, the Iceman. And if you know, you know. Okay, because Merab has a habit of losing to ice. And I've seen the video. And that does worry me, in all honesty, because that is a concussion. Okay? Even though he's never been chinned in his career, he may have been chinned outside the UFC. He's never really been chinned or KO'd badly in the UFC so far. But what he did when diving headfirst into that ice, that's a concussion. And it's a really bad one. And that is quite worrying for a guy who cuts a lot of weight. I must be honest with you guys, but I just don't see Stamann having that kind of power. But Merab is just one of these guys. He terrifies me. When I see him in an embedded episode for Aljamain Sterling versus Piotr Jan at UFC 259... I see him just, like, balancing on a chair, on, like, the top of the chair. Not even, like, the seating area of the chair. Like, the top end of the back of the chair. Just, like, tilting on one toe, barely hanging on while he's drilling in something up the top. Like, I think he's got a death wish. The only thing I can see him... I think he might lose to himself one day. One day, Merab Dvalishvili is going to fall into a wood chipper or something like that while he was fucking trying to make a balloon animal on top of a fucking seesaw or something. Like, he wants to die, I feel like, with Merab Dvalishvili. He's always in dangerous situations. Either way, this one ain't a dangerous situation for Merab. I think he does get it done against Cody Stamann. But if Cody Stamann wins... good for him. I guess he could also be looking at some of the fights that I've just matched up with Merab Dvalishvili. He's also coming off a loss, so it'd be a little bit of a different situation for Cody Stamann if he did beat Merab Dvalishvili. But Merab's got all the momentum. Georgia's doing real well right now. I think Giga Chikadze and Merab are both going to win this weekend. Georgia's on the map. I'm going for an all-Georgia parlay, to be honest with you guys. But I'm not going to put money on it, to be honest with you, because, I don't know. I don't like putting money on stuff. It really pisses me off. But I'm probably going to put money on it, let's be real. Even if it's £1. I just need to get my fucking fix. I'm going to get my fix and put some money on like a Georgian parlay. Giga Chikadze, Merab Dvalishvili. Good stuff. I think both of them win by decision. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. Goodbye.